Welcome to FutureSounds FM, Season 3, Episode 3. This is Rob, and I'm just doing a little intro ahead of an interview which you may think a little left field, as Thom settles in with London future funker Snowdream. As well as chatting about the UK scene, they couldn't not touch upon Snowdream's other status as a viral TikTok sensation. Snowdream is responsible for those shareable skits where he stands aloft his decks and imagines the worst DJ mashups and drops for an innumerable range of genres. Think an unself-conscious wedding DJ. Thom and Snowdream then talk future funk and how going viral can help or hinder your main gig. Or should that be a side hustle? Grab a cuppa, beer, vape, or your cultural relaxant of choice and lean in. We hope you enjoy.
Yeah. Very cool. We're doing this interview in like a sort of avant-garde order because I haven't introduced you yet.
No, I'm really sorry. I will just talk forever. That's genuinely my fault.
That's cool. No, I'm looking forward to it. Maybe we should present this in like sound collage form. Are we doing government names or are you under alias? First name. I'm not going to surname.
You can call me whatever. I mean, you can call me Elliot. You can call me Snowdream. I don't care. I'm easy.
Cool. Well, you just introduced yourself. I'm here with Elliot, aka Snowdream. So it's just me, Thom, here today, and yeah, one of the rare in-person interviews from my studio in northeast London. Thank you very much for trekking over here.
That's all right, no worries.
On a Tuesday afternoon, we're both freelancers.
Yes, the life of we're free.
Yeah,
whether or not we're working much or getting paid much is a different question, but we are indeed free in a way.
Yeah, we've got time, not necessarily money.
No, that's you're right.
That's cool. What does freelance work involve for you then?
It's sort of ever changing. That's sort of the key thing I've taken away from it.
Yeah.
And how steady life is, especially when you live in a city like London, very much varies. But you find with the more work you put in, you do get loads of. I mean, I found I'm fortunate enough to have been given some pretty good opportunities. It's just a lot of the time it's about maintaining that sort of level of like staying motivated, especially when working from home, because I have found that difficult at times. But yeah, just staying motivated, keeping creative, being on your toes, and
you haven't told us what you do, which leads me to conclude that you're a spy.
That's true. I mean, well, it's out there. It's out there now. I've been DJing for the moment. Before that, I was a production assistant for some social media influencers. But if you are listening to this, you probably know me through either my music, which is under the name Snowdream, or through DJing under the same name, normally fun mashups. But if you don't know me for that, it'll be future funk and vapor adjacent sounds.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, hopefully we have an audience for this show, coming from a few different places, and hopefully everybody finds something interesting about our conversation. I was saying to you, I don't want to lead with the social media stuff, not for any kind of snooty reasons and stuff, but like if only because the music came first, and I think still comes first for you. So I think you were telling me a little bit off air, but maybe you can give the listeners a bit of an introduction about how you became involved with future funk. How you became involved with future funk and vaporwave to begin with as a listener, and then maybe how you became involved with the scenes. So yeah, what was your early engagements with those musics?
So I think very early on it was about 2016 or 17, and this was sort of when I think I might have joined the scene or sort of got interested in the scene just as like the vaporwave side of things wasn't as maybe at its peak. But I remember vapor trap being really big at the time, and I remember being really into like artists like Blank Banshee when they first dropped, and that transitioned into like a massive like influence in terms of future funk, a lot of vaporwave sounds as well. I think I heard Mesh was one of the first ones I ever heard. I think it was Dream Sequence, I think the album's called.
Yeah.
And I remember being really fascinated with the idea of creating like sound collage, and also the idea that it was a community of creators where there were as many people making the music as there was listening to it. So there was just so much content that was being made. And from there, it developed into a lot of fascination with things like future funk. Dan Mason was a massive influence when I first started making music.
Yeah.
It was the album Miami Virtual. I think I've said this on a podcast or two before, but Miami Virtual was the first album where I stepped back and I was thinking, this is like genuinely fascinating music that, even though it's quite repetitive and it has this very distinct sound, it just like had this weird, like, it gave me that weird out of body experience I think a lot of vaporwave music gives people, and it inspired me to make my own. I made my own specifically because of Dan Mason. I wanted to try and emulate that style, so I made like very early like vaporwave albums, which to be honest are not great, and they're very like sound collagey, but I made all of them on Audacity, so the quality of which and the degree in which their quality was
that's the authentic way to do it.
I know. Yeah, I was just basically punking loads of like 80s songs I really liked. I was saying off air as well earlier that I'm really into a lot of 80s music because when I was younger I had a radio by my bedside and it would always play like old 80s tunes, so think like Michael Bolton, think Tony Braxton, like all of those like classic like old school, I don't know if that's 80s, but old school
80s, 90s.
Yeah, old school like R&B and soul music. And that would like they would sing me to sleep essentially. Yeah. So I almost think they live in like my subconscious in this really weird way, where a lot of my influences for like the chords I like and the sound that I like making sort of is inspired by a lot of that stuff.
I bet you listen to it quietly as well. There's something quite magical about that, or like on a shitty radio speaker.
Yeah, exactly. Well. Yeah, exactly.
That was lo-fi aesthetic.
Weirdly enough, those like funny, cheap things that you might have on your bedside that are just playing you like music from essentially your local radio station just ends up playing such a big influence for how you make stuff creatively. All that sort of stuff's really fascinating.
I like that idea of things on your bedside table. It's like the artifacts of your childhood.
Basically.
And like one of them being a radio, or like, you know, it could be a Walkman or a Discman or something. I like that. It's like a little portal.
But the other thing as well is that vaporwave captures a lot of feelings of nostalgia, and it is nostalgia for me, but it's not because I grew up in the 80s. It's because, like my parents did, for example, it's because I heard those songs whispering away what in my subconscious as I was sleeping. So
what your formative years were? This is what during the early 2000s, is it?
Yeah, mid 2000s, I think, something like that. Yeah.
I feel old.
I'm really sorry.
Well, I feel like I might have about a decade on you, unfortunately.
Wait, how old are you?
34.
Close.
Yeah.
Close. I'm 26.
Okay, that's all right. Yeah, I'm not going to cry.
26? No, wait. Maths? 25. Sorry, maths.
Yeah, about a decade. But that's cool. I mean, yeah, our scene definitely like it encapsulates like a fairly wide age range, doesn't it? Because you're definitely not the youngest in the scene. There are people coming through who their memories of this kind of thing are very secondhand, aren't they? Yeah. Or almost like secondhand through like other vaporwave artists.
Ironically, there'll be a nostalgia for vaporwave artists, and obviously the music they sampled is almost nostalgic for older stuff. Mm-hmm. There's this weird, beautiful thing where
I think it's happening.
We're all just nostalgic for the last thing, and it's influencing the music there anyway.
I think some of the like most obvious vaporwave aesthetics, you know, the kind of floral shop style look, I think people stopped doing that for a bit because it was a bit played out and it was a bit sort of, you know, like Reddit bait, wasn't it? You know?
Yeah.
But then I think people are like quite nostalgic for that stuff. Again, like it's been around long enough that people are like, hey, that stuff was so cool. Let's do it again.
And it was very easy for music to be oversaturated like that because it had this ethos that anyone could make it. Mm-hmm. So there was so much of this content, and it's not to say that all of it was bad, but when there's so much of one thing, people are eventually going to want to either hear something else or want to make something else. I've felt that to an extent. I've not even mentioned that. Yeah, getting into like Dan Mason when he started making future funk was when I was like, oh, this is like unbelievable. Even in the early vaporwave days, I think I wanted to make future funk. I basically just hadn't discovered what sidechain compression was, and I was like, I don't know how to do anything that's like house related. And then
I wanted a dance music version of the music that made you feel a certain way.
I think so, yeah. I've always really liked dance music. I mean, I know Daft Punk's a really obvious artist to cite for that style and going into that sort of thing, but that was like a great early influence on me, and especially actually their 2013 album. And because people I don't think they appreciate that album was them they were almost making the samples that they were using for their old records, and I really liked how they created versions of that music that's almost as good as like what they would flip into like classic tunes, like One More Time. They'd like Get Lucky. I know it's overplayed, but Get Lucky is a classic
so God,
song.
geez, I was trying to work out which album you were talking about by 2013. So you mean Random Access Memories?
That's the one. Thank you.
Is that old?
Yeah, that whole.
I thought it came out like 2 years ago.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's what's that? Yeah, 11 years ago.
You're right. Yeah, geez.
Sorry about that.
And yeah, I mean that is them hiring. But that's them hiring the session players who would have played on the kind of recordings that
exactly.
they would have originally
And there's something
sampled.
really cool about, like, I almost wish I could like channel my, if I could sing, I would like be channeling my like Michael Bolton, and I'd be making like, I'd be using like those massive 80s chords, those like cool drums, like all that sort of stuff, and I'd be like belting my absolute heart out over some
You should do it.
It made just like stuff like that. I just think's really cool, and I think it's read as a bit pastiche, but it comes from a place of like genuine like.
No, I mean that thing you're describing is genuine, isn't it? The sort of if this was the music that sang you to sleep, you know, like that's genuine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I think some early vaporwave like has the air of being like a bit punkish. I don't want to. Yeah, maybe this isn't information I should reveal, so I'm not going to say who. I'm going to say that in the process of making this Nobody Here film, which is a real thing and is going to come out at some point soon, this vaporwave documentary. But yeah, one of the contributors was speaking about a very early vaporwave figure, prominent vaporwave figure, and was saying that in their opinion, this influential person started off making vaporwave with like quite a sort of punkish attitude towards their source material, and was quite almost dismissive of it, like, oh, you know, this is some kind of slightly tacky older stuff that I'm going to repurpose and make like a kind of arty collage project with, but like in the process of doing so, like developed like a real affection for it. So yeah, I think like actually now the default position amongst vaporwavers is like no, like we're reclaiming this stuff, like we do genuinely like these smooth sounds, like you know, like they were considered slightly naff by the kind of music press for a long time. Yeah. But there is something quite magical about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the sincerity that comes with it as well. My favourite vaporwave or just albums in this scene in general are ones that take that sound, that 80s aesthetic, but there's a genuine sincerity to kind of add and explore elements of it. Another favourite vapor album, which I think My Pet Flamingo has done an album run of, is Panama Papers by Runners Club.
Yeah.
That album I think is utterly beautiful, and I think part of that is one, they're almost, if I know rightly, they're not sampling anything, they're sampling themselves effectively, but also the fact that it comes from a genuine place of sincerity, and you feel that when you hear music like that. Like there are songs that they've made on that album that are basically deep cuts, but like are lodged in my brain forever, like Talk to You and Made for You, both end in you, but like those two songs, for example,
use a good pop lyric, isn't it?
Yeah.
pop word, isn't it? Sounds good.
It does. But all their stuff comes from how I see it, like a really sincere and genuine place, and that's something I'd like to think I emulate in a lot of my music. Like future funk stuff, when I hear it makes me so happy. And when I once the kick drum is dropped in there and I hear it all come together, it makes me so happy listening back to it. You listen to it so often that by the time you do all the mixing and mastering and you put it out, it's like, cool, I'm done with that now, that's fine, move on to the next thing. But I don't put out any music that doesn't make me feel so happy whilst I'm making it.
Yeah. That's some vaporwave has got like a kind of arty strain in it, and like maybe irony or kind of critique or whatever, but like future funk, it's party music, isn't it? I'm sure there is future funk about being lonely or sad,
maybe,
or
and that's cool. Like if I like art that's doing a lot of these different things with any of these genres, if people want to make vaporwave or future funk to express like a punk, like I don't like this music, but I'm going to make something that's like an art piece about that, that's still cool. Like, I think art is cool in general, like anything along those lines. I think it's just about being creative, and if it's coming from an honest place and like an earnest place, no matter what you're feeling, I think that's valid.
Nice. So yeah, but I think you're telling me off air, but like you don't really have a prehistory in making other kinds of music. It literally was that you heard like vaporwave and Future Funkum was like, I could do this and I'm going to do this, right? Is that more or less how it went down?
Basically, I actually forgot about this. I did have like a year or so where I was actually producing beats. That was like I've always been into like hip hop and rap music when I was younger, so making beats for a little while. And I was actually, do you know looperman.com? Have you ever heard of Looperman?
What is it?
It's a website where you can just basically download
it's like loop
samples. Yeah. But it was a free website. You could just look up anything you want and just download those. So I used to make mixtapes off of looped melodies and looped drums. I mean, it's very rare that people create their own sounds necessarily, but I was just taking loops for different stuff, putting it together, going, oh my god, am I technically a music producer now? I thought I was Timbaland because I was just chucking some
that's what people
samples.
do these days with Splice, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Like big A-list producers using Splice loops.
Yeah, including me. I love Splice. Splice is great.
You're a Splice boy.
I am indeed, yeah. I mean...
Splice melange. I derailed it with a shitty pun. Have you seen Dune 2?
Not yet, no.
I thought you were a movie boy.
I rewatched the first one. Okay. I find it a bit dull. It's good.
Well, you're going to love this one.
Everyone and their mum has told me this film is brilliant, so I will see it. I'm not like absolutely don't. I'm a massive Star Wars guy though, so like all of that stuff I find really cool. So I really want to like Dune, but I don't feel it quite as much.
Didn't David Lynch turn down the Star Wars job to direct the original Dune film? So
I've not heard that, but if that's true, that's really funny. And I'd like to be in the alternate reality where David Lynch made Star Wars, because I just want to know what that looks like.
Yeah, we live in our current reality. We can see David Lynch. Dune is already pretty special. Have you seen it?
I've not. No,
it is extraordinary. It features Sting in his underpants.
Although I think there was loads of studio interference with the making of that film. I want to see David Lynch make Star Wars with zero studio interference.
Yeah.
I just want to know what that looks like a side by side, because I imagine that's great. I only saw Mulholland Drive like half a year ago and it blew my mind. It was really cool.
Yeah, imagine if Star Wars was more like that.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if it'd be a multi-billion-dollar franchise.
I would like to see... are you familiar with the director Harmony Korine at all?
Yes.
Yeah, I want to see Harmony Korine make a Star Wars film so bad. I love that man to pieces. I need him to make more movies.
Did he do Spring Breakers?
He did. That's one of my favourite films. I love that movie. Just for like the visuals and the way in which he wanted to shoot that like a music video, and it just feels like an hour and a half long music video, but it's like the most beautiful, colourful music video I've ever seen in my life. I think that film's unbelievable. I like Gummo as well a lot. All of that stuff. He's just very, very... He's my favourite director, but not because I love all of his films, but I just love the stylistic and artistic directions he goes in. I just think he's really interesting.
That can be true of favourite musicians as well, can't it? Like, if people ask... I always struggle if like people say, what do I listen to? Because it's like, there have been times in my life where I've listened like crazy to people like Frank Zappa or whatever, and like that Frank Zappa is somebody who there's probably a majority of his music I don't like anymore, but like everything he did was at least interesting.
Yeah. I mean, like I've been getting up my vinyls recently, just listening to a few of those. I mean, I listened to the Denzel Curry album from like 2018 the other day, and then this morning I'm listening to like Round About Midnight by Miles Davis. Like
nice.
There is
yes, Miles Davis.
It doesn't have to be any sort of consistency. I'm very inconsistent with the styles of music I listen to. I listen to more or less, and I will listen to more or less anything. I've maybe certain genres I listen to less, but yeah, I will listen to basically anything. And that's sort of how I got into Vaporwave, because on online communities, they always talk about what new thing that people are listening to.
Yeah.
And there was a period of time where that was like one of the big new things. I was like, I need to hear.
And you were being
stuff.
directed towards YouTube or towards Bandcamp?
I think YouTube at first, and then... So I'm one of those really weird people, not as weird as some of the people on there, but I love rateyourmusic.com. I don't love all the people on there, to be honest, but that website's so good for recommending new music. So anything...
Serves a purpose, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Anything Vaporwave related, I was like checking their charts, being like, okay, what are people saying is the best things? And I just remember listening to loads of it going, this hit that, like, again, that childhood nostalgic thing that was like really addictive to listen to, and then eventually... became a thing where it's like, I need to make some stuff.
Yeah, we
like
need
this.
curators, don't we? When there's so much of something, like you kind of need people who've put in the time or who have got like a taste that you respect to be like, you know, I mean, Rate Your Music is doing it kind of semi-democratically as well, isn't it? Because it's based on a mass of people's opinions.
I've definitely stolen this like quote from somewhere, but it was something like the job of a music critic back in the day, because music was so expensive, it was about what was worth your money. And now the job of those type of people is not about what's worth your money, because everyone's got streaming. It's now about what's worth your time, because there's so much music you can listen to, and everyone's got Spotify and or whatever, so you can listen to as many albums as you like. But sometimes it's good to find the people that you're interested in, to whether it's people, communities, etc., to curate what is worth your time. You've only got so much time in the day to listen to new music, presumably. Like what could you be listening to if you like this? What could you listen to after that? All that sort of stuff. And that's helped me a lot.
Hopefully you find some things by accident.
Yeah.
You know, just as well. But curators play a valuable role. There are people in vaporwave and future funk scenes whose roles are essentially curatorial as well. But there are people who are curators who, you know, and they make music as well, or, you know, like could like somebody like Pad Chennington, for example, is a critic who also makes music, or he's a musician who is also a critic.
And that's why vaporwave and all these communities are so cool. I mean, even like My Pet Flamingo and Time Slave and all of these guys, like, it took me ages to realise that like three-piece suites was you lot. It took me ages to realise that Donor Lens was you lot. And I was like, hold on, who are these artists who keep getting these like who keep getting these albums put on My Pet Flamingo? And I went, oh, it's them. That's really cool.
Yeah, industry plants.
Exactly. Well, if you started up your own thing where you become that thing, and also a lot of these projects in their own respect have done very well with that as well. I mean, it's all off your own back, so it's not. I hope you don't feel like it's
no. I think starting your own label is good advice. I think if you're struggling to get your music heard by other people, like a good way to do it is you know, if you've got the kind of the drive, like to start your own thing,
and you're potentially building your own community, and you're probably making friends with all these people who you could be, you know, making music. If there's people, especially the amount of artists I've heard where I'm like, these are really cool artists, I feel like they should be put on to a certain extent, then having your own way, creating an outlet for them is such a beautiful way to strike up a friendship or create just even a collaboration for like music, anything like that. It's quite special, and everything you guys have been doing on My Pet Flamingo and obviously on all the other labels as well, it's just really, really cool, and it's all community led and driven as well. It's good stuff.
Nice. I think that leads quite nicely. Like I kind of want you to describe how you see the UK like future funk scene specifically. So you were talking off air about meeting people for the first time at the Groove Horizons event, which I think was in 2019, like pre-pandemic. I think maybe you might be able to give us like quite a good snapshot of like what the future funk scene in the UK was then, like what it looks like now, like how the ecosystem's grown, and maybe like go on to kind of say what its potential for growth is. Like, so like who are the names, you know, what's going on, what does it look like, UK scene?
I mean, 2019, so that Groove Horizons gig, I went from my small town in university, which was like a couple hours by train, to London, specifically just because I heard that they were putting on a future funk show. And I was like, it was at the time in which I was getting really into it, and I started trying to make my own. I was like, I need to just see this live. I always really like going to gigs, and I did like coming into London if I had the opportunity to. So I took that opportunity. I went on my own. I tried to come with a friend, but they weren't free. So I was like, cool, this is a solo adventure, and it was a really great time. When it's like 40 people and you only know them by like usernames, it's quite weird at first, because you're meeting people and they're not realising they're the people you're about to see play in 2 hours and things like that. Yeah. But it was a really special moment, because it felt like an online community, which can feel very like not isolating, but it can feel very like, when it's between screens, it doesn't really have that tangible like, oh, this is like a connection we've all got. This is a moment we're all sharing together. And it was like 40 or 50 people in this. I think it was a gay club that they'd rented out for that evening, and it was like all of these DJs putting on all of my favourite songs that I will never hear in any other club except for this one right now, and there was something really special about that.
Yeah.
I think sort of when the pandemic years came around, future funk's sort of morphing into something slightly different. Maybe it's also because it's not necessarily what I'm making all the time now anyway. I'm still putting in the work on a few songs, but I think everyone's ideas are sort of shifting in different ways, and future funk doesn't feel the same to me as even 5 years ago when people were producing it. But I think it's developing into something, especially in the UK, really interesting. I think of Mr. Wax, who is a very underrated player in the scene, who is doing lots of like really cool stuff with like drum and bass and like just house music.
Yeah. Kind of putting UK sounds into UK future.
Yeah, I'm thinking even like a lot of the Donor Lens stuff, where it's a lot of like drum and bass breaks and loads of interesting melds of other genres together. And actually bringing in some of the, like, you had Data Girl on like one of the singers as well, like bringing players in from the scene and getting them involved in it as well. I think there's a really good opportunity for like a UK vaporwave scene that's like very specific to like this sound that I think could become its own like real thing. It's certainly an idea that inspires me to make more stuff that's not always like in the same vein as what maybe everyone else is doing.
So like some of your more recent singles have got like a touch of the garage kind of in the future funk beats, which are already quite similar to kind of house beats. That's not a million miles off what like Fortet might do, or Fred Again, or Over Mono.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, is that it would work in the sense that, yeah, you're right, with those artists you mentioned, they're like very popular right now, and it's not to say you're making them for the sake of popularity, but there is almost like there is almost a crossroads that I think the UK scene can go down that can make it really like take off, and I think in a way that we maybe aren't
the first,
seeing
like
it.
a mainstream festival booking or club booking, like not devoted to our internet.
If Young
music.
Bay can do it, obviously Young Bay's using a lot of future funk sounds that have been kind of popular for ages, but there's only Young Bay realistically. There's a couple other names that do pretty well, but Young Bay plays like mainstream festivals, for example, and his stuff's fantastic as well. But I think there's a really cool opportunity, and it doesn't even have to be like, the aim might not necessarily be playing the major festivals, but I think even in the UK there can be this whole scene that's created, and potentially you can take it to other places as well. Or at the very least, I think it's something that makes us stand out in a scene where there's loads of artists producing loads of stuff, and you know, it's typically a lot of American artists making it. I wouldn't consider myself a super patriotic person, but if I have the opportunity to bring like two-step and garage, if I can introduce that to a vaporwave crowd and create something cool out of that.
That experience playing in New York and LA, playing UK sounds to Americans, and it goes
what was it that Frank Javc said? Like
English noises.
English noises.
Said,
I want that to be a genre.
Noises.
I want that to be listed as a genre of music. English like noises.
Yeah, put it on the next Future Sounds poster.
Hell yeah!
So if we go back to 2019, the Groove Horizons show. I keep wanting to say Groove Remote. I've always wanted to say that because Groove Remote was our previous guest on this podcast. I always get Groove Horizons, Groove Remote confused in my brain. But yeah, so who was playing then? So
it was Mr. Wax, Strawberry Station, EV.EXI, Conscious Thoughts, Android Apartment. There might be a couple others, I'm sorry.
So Android Apartment is
Melonade.
it Italian guy based in London?
I believe so,
based in the UK, yeah, that's cool.
There were loads of cool people in the scene. Some of which are still like making like great bangers. I always look forward to when EV.EXI comes out of the woodwork with new music, because you never hear from him, and then as soon as you do, it's new music, and it's the coolest new thing you've ever heard. And he's got an interesting blend of like a lot of like French electro stuff, where it's the beats are like a lot harder, and they're like the chops in them as well are just so cool as well. And he has a very distinct sound, and even just down to like how he mixes and masters his stuff, it's very very punchy music.
Yeah,
and it's really cool.
Rough and ready stuff.
Even like when a lot of future funk is very like laid back and fun to listen to, his stuff's like just hits you over the head, and I just think it sounds so cool.
That's cool. I mean, so yeah, you're talking of people like going off and doing their own thing. Then, you've got examples of that, because like some of your releases are self-released, and some of them have been with labels. But yeah, one of the labels being Strawberry Station's own label, right? So like that's an example of somebody, you know, just like building their own thing, as well as kind of releasing through existing channels, like introducing a new channel into. So that's Strawberry Station with Very Good Records.
Yeah.
And he's got his kind of puts on streams and things as well. So kind of building a lot. Building your own things, not just relying on existing things. Like if you want things to grow, then you got to do your own building, I think.
Yeah, and collaborating, and it's something I've been quite bad at with a lot of music production. Sometimes I think if we make something, I think producers can identify with this. When you make something and you think it sounds cool, but you'd like to bring someone in to collaborate, but you can't control what happens in that collaboration process. And I think there is an element of like not treating your music as like your baby, and like being open to work with other people, collaborate with other people, and and whether that be that or releasing your music on other people's labels or other things, like it can be pretty daunting. Even just the idea of like asking like people like, oh, could I put my album your way? I think people don't want to always push themselves, or they don't always back themselves with their music, and it's a weird thing with being a music producer, because you don't want to look like an asshole for being like, oh, my music's the best thing ever, but you also need to sell yourself as well. There's a weird like parallel, there's a weird like duality you've got to kind of balance there, and I think it's been really interesting, especially with the journey I've had with my music, because I feel like it's making this music sort of pushed me out my shell a lot more. I feel like through this scene and through meeting all these people, I feel like I've become a bit more of a confident person. I think with my music production, I think I back myself a bit more. When you start out, you're just like, oh, I hope people like it. Oh, it's going to be embarrassing. Oh, God, X, Y, and Z. And I'm very grateful that I've had a lot of people who've embraced it, who've said very kind things. So yeah,
it's still daunting even when you do have a small audience and stuff. Like there's always when you're making music, it's like, how many people are actually going to hear this? Like,
but that's the exact reason you should put it out. It's because what's the worst that's going to happen? Two people don't like it, and they're the only people who heard it. It's like, all right, cool, mate. Let's do the next thing. Just keep pushing it. Just keep doing what you're doing. Like that's all you can do.
That's a healthy attitude.
It is, and I don't always apply that. It's like you always tell yourself what you sometimes tell yourself the right thing you should do, but you don't always do it. I'm very good at saying advice that I never follow.
No, it's good advice nonetheless. Are there some things in your discography that you're particularly proud of, or is it mainly like the most recent thing that you've done? Are there things that you look back on fondly?
I do quite like, Future Funk's always been like one of my early loves for getting into music, but I have noticed in almost all of the projects I make, I have found a way to shove like UK garage sounds or aesthetics or like even just drums in like a breakdown. And I've done that as early as like in my 2020 album. I have a song called Ecstasy, and I do like a bass line breakdown, and it almost like doesn't work with the song at all, but I love it so much because
is that on Open Space or A Good Feeling?
That's on A Good Feeling.
Yeah.
And I remember at the time thinking, this is so stupid, but it makes me feel so happy. Again, it goes back to just kind of I feel like it sounds cliche. I follow my heart whenever I'm producing stuff. Like, what do I want to hear? What would make me very happy if I heard this in a song? And a lot of what I've been making recently, I'm really happy with. It's not entirely with like a future funk sound. I'm leaning a bit more towards a lot of UK garage and two-step, but I'm sampling a lot of like 80s stuff because I think that sound is cool, and I think a lot of creative decisions should be led by, I like these things that aren't assembled together. I'm gonna take the reins and assemble all of these together. So like, I really love like 80s melodies and synths and chords, but I want to mix that with like 90s drums and percussion and just like hopefully bring something new to it.
That checks out. Yeah, and there's still some like sidechain action going on and stuff, but if it has like kind of a more like raw house sound on. Yeah, that was kind of my. Yeah,
and I've been I think I was not accused, but I was told that when I made that Open Space album, I think some people said they liked it, but it felt more like a mixtape because I sort of diverted from future funk, and then it just basically became a garage album by the end.
And you had to put out some future funk singles afterwards, didn't you? Or you put out some things.
I think I did. Yeah,
it's like people were telling me to make some more future funk, so here it is.
I think to an extent, yeah. But I just sort of went for it. Really, I found what I always came back to making when you've got like the blank like Ableton screen. It's like, what am I making today? What do I feel like making? I just kept going back to a lot of UK garage stuff, and I don't think it's in a way where I'm forcing it into that vaporwave sound. I think there's a really cool window for sounds where it can be, I think, something that feels like my own thing. And especially since a lot of when you start making out music, you're making the things that you've heard. You almost want to just emulate artists. And I think that's natural when you start making music. You emulate the things you really like. I like to think that nowadays I'm making stuff that is more in line with what sounds like me or like what I want to make.
It's difficult with dance music, isn't it? Because like dance music is kind of functional and it's designed to be strung together with other bits of dance music, you know, in a mix, and like it needs to have things in common with existing music for it to work. Otherwise it's going to stand out like a sore thumb. And like the challenge is kind of sneaking in little bits of your own personality, or like little production things that give the game away that it's you involved, you know, without just using a producer tag.
But the interesting thing is, I feel like that's the difference between, you know, obviously people can stream and listen to music how they want, but it's the difference between someone adding your song to a playlist of other songs and someone being a fan of you. Like I think like Donor Lens is a good example. I feel like Donor Lens is like a lot of Donor Lens music would be quite difficult to chuck in the regular playlist rotation, but if you like the music, that type of stuff, you really get into it, and you get into the albums and you get into singles and all that sort of stuff. It lives in its own world that's like all yours essentially.
That's really nice to hear. Yeah, that's kind of the point of the project, because we've got other projects which are a bit more clear what genre they are, and this is the genre where the music where we just do whatever we want genre wise. And yeah, it's kind of funny that it's our biggest one, but that's cool.
What? Fridge on. And then you get to turn the fridge on the Synthwave playlist, and everyone's like, yo, this is sick. How many?
That's funny.
I got so many streams as well. I was like, I remember that song, but I was like, oh, okay, cool. This is like their biggest song.
Yeah, no, it's a bit bizarre. Yeah, no, we never thought it would be, but like, yeah, you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, we'll get onto it. You probably wouldn't have predicted your social media success when you were dabbling with it. But let's get onto that in a second. But yeah, I just want to I wonder if there's any Snowdream lore. Like, what's the kind of story behind the kind of snow sports iconography and the kind of the bowling iconography and stuff, like sports in general, like or obscure sports.
I actually didn't think about it, that I've just like referenced loads of sports. Right. Yeah. Right, new album, football related. That's the plan now.
Reading FC.
Yeah, Reading. Yeah, I'm really sorry for anyone who is not interested in Reading FC, but my football club is dying. It's making me really sad. So if that bleeds through into my social media, I apologise. But
you should summarise the story. I genuinely think, like, without exaggeration, that it's the biggest story in sports. I think it's like criminally underreported. But it's also happening at Reading.
But it's unreported because Reading's not an interesting club to people. That's genuinely the reason why people don't talk. To boil a long story short, football has an ownership problem. Big investors come in. They pour money into hopefully your football club going to the Premier League. Then when that doesn't happen, they end up screwing over your club, whether that be through, well, our owner specifically not paying HMRC, which is our tax in the UK, firing loads of stuff. Basically, they're trying to asset strip the club so that they can get away with it scot-free, because in this instance, it's not the owner of the club who gets punished for it, it's the club itself, even though the owner has all of the influence and money that makes it a thing. So it's basically just someone who is just taking away everything that makes it our club, and there's a good chance that it might not exist anymore, which is really sad, because it's like I think it's the oldest club in the south of England, and it might not exist anymore. There's a lot of tradition, and people are really into football in the UK, and it might seem a bit much to people who don't see it in the UK, but it's very much, especially for Reading FC, it's a family club. It's very community led. You might be used to seeing like Man United and Chelsea and all these big brands that don't feel like that, but this club is, and it feels like an asset to our community, and it feels like it's being taken away from us by an owner who just wants to get away with as little damage as possible, and it's really sad.
And owner who's done it to other clubs in other countries
as well. Hashtag sell before we die. I'm going to squeeze that one in there as
Yeah,
well. There has been recent news that looks more hopeful, but yeah, it's
results are okay.
Yeah, great result this weekend. Really, really good result. Yeah, very happy with that. But and I back this manager as well. I think he's really he's a young, interesting manager, and I'm happy with that as long as we stay in the leagues. But really sorry if this isn't interesting to anyone who's more into the music side of things. But
yeah, no. Read up on the story. Reading Football Club, football being soccer.
Yes, yeah. It's a very sad situation, but I'm hoping that we pull through it. Very first game I went to as a young boy was the last game of our 106 season, which is the highest points any English football club's ever got in the EFL.
Yeah, the second tier of English football, which is still like a crazy high standard. Isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, you can maybe argue because the Premier League has less teams, then it's kind of impossible for them to reach it. But
yeah,
listen, I will take any records that Reading hold.
Back on, less sad territory, maybe. What's the story behind the snow sports and the bowling?
Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot what you're talking about. Right, so Snowdream as a name, the origin of it. Did you ever play SSX Tricky?
Yeah.
That's the origin of the Snowdream name. It's the second map on SSX Tricky, and that was like one of my favourite games on the PS2. The PS2 was my first console. I'm really sorry. So I was really into that game, and again, sort of like a retro aesthetic and just a name that I thought sounded really cool. I nearly went for Tokyo Megaplex, which was also on that game, but I think someone else actually already has that name. I don't know what music they make.
It's having a big moment, the SSX Tricky thing, isn't it, with this kind of video game music revival?
Yeah, exactly.
SSX is one of the
and my music doesn't necessarily sound like all of the stuff that's on there, but I think it's almost starting to sound closer, because that was very like Y2K breaks and like breakbeat type sounds that they were doing in that. So it didn't link musically, but it was a name that I thought sounded cool, and I think worked with what I wanted to do, which was just taking loads of old sounds initially and just make like collagey stuff out of it.
And it's colourful and larger than life. It's not a realistic game, is it?
That's true.
Everything's hyped and over the top, and I think future funk music is like quite sort of exaggerated sound, isn't it?
I wish that was intentional. It wasn't, but yeah, that is true as well. The sports iconography sort of depends. I mean, the Snowdream with the Open Space album, the sports iconography worked more so there because it's just in the namesake and it sort of is linked to that. With the Strike EP I made, which was bowling themed, that was basically just first and foremost, well, I guess second and foremost, like after music, I'm a massive film fan, so I just had this idea to make something that was themed around The Big Lebowski, because it's probably my favourite film of all time, and it's so quotable, and I had the idea to pull little audio clips from the Japanese dub of The Big Lebowski.
Oh, very cool. Is that what it is?
Yeah, so if you hear Japanese, I don't think I've ever mentioned that anywhere, but the Japanese like spoken word passages throughout that EP is the Japanese dub of The Big Lebowski.
I love that.
I just thought would be really cool for that. I think it's mainly just to give the album a sense of cohesion.
Yeah.
Especially when a lot of the time when I think of ideas, I'm not necessarily making every song thinking, how am I going to make this like a totally like story piece by piece album with chapters and like prologues and all that sort of stuff. I sort of just make whatever I like at the time and see if they work in like a sequence format.
You can retcon a concept.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And the audience doesn't need to know that, and you can have like a very loose concept, like going like heavy on the kind of concept album is maybe a bit prog, isn't it? But not making War of the Worlds.
The other thing is, I love albums that do that as well. I don't know if I could, me personally, I don't know if I could sit down and make something where it's really structured and it's like got really clear themes and ideas. Sometimes there'll be like parallels that end up working, which is more or less coincidence, but I'm not really like a concept guy. I'm just like I want to make what I think is really fun and see if it works in an album, because there's loads of songs I've made that I think sound really cool but just didn't fit with an album, and I was like, okay, I'll just leave this. Either it's going to be a hard drive banger or maybe I'll come back to it another day, all that sort of stuff.
Hard drive banger being the tracks nobody gets to hear. Right?
Yeah, they just live on there.
Oh man, those are the ones that you want to revisit after a few years and they've kind of aged like a fine wine.
I've done that recently. Yeah. So what's happening on my new album, there are a couple little things where I'm like, this needs to exist somewhere. It hasn't worked for a few years. It's not fit anywhere, but it's then this new project's come around and it just fits. There's like a vocal chop that I made, and I had in my head for years going, this has to exist somewhere. And I was making a tune. I was like, this should have some sort of vocal chops on it, and I don't know what would work. And then I like had the like Jimmy Neutron brain blast moment of like, that's the one. And then I love it when those moments come together where you have like those like euphoric moments of, oh my god, I know how to make this work. All that sort of stuff.
We're lucky computers work in a way that's now possible.
If they didn't, I wouldn't be here. So I'm very fortunate in that sense.
That everything is archived, and it hasn't degraded over time. It's just there.
Yeah, exactly.
You can access it. It's the same as it was when you made it, and you're very much not the same as you were when you made it.
And it's so nice that the internet's dropped all of the there's no way to be gatekeeping in the internet age with music at all. Like, it used to be you couldn't release an album unless you were signed with like a big label or like you knew X and Y person, and now absolutely anyone can make anything they want, and they could blow up making a song in their bedroom. That's really cool to me.
Yeah, but it's harder than ever to get your voice heard. It's easier to get yourself into the marketplace, but the marketplace is many times bigger than it ever was.
Yes, you got to find. Well, you don't have to be. If you want to be really successful, either you find ways to stand out or you go down those traditional avenues. But the fact that you can even do it just to be even making like a modest income, just doing what you're doing, I think is really cool. I think the vaporwave and future funk scenes have found ways for that to be a possibility in a way that like some other music scenes are still struggling with. How do we make money doing this thing? Like streaming is essentially free. It's essentially no money. Like if I'm in an indie band and it costs £300-500 a day in the recording studio to make our recording, and then we have to divide it between 4 or 5 people, and then we put it on a streaming platform which pays the same as it would pay to one person who makes a track on Audacity. Like the economics there are broken in the same way that the economics became broken for like big bands in jazz to work, and they had to become small groups, or the way that orchestras stopped being financially viable when like state support kind of dropped out. I think I think people in vaporwave and future funk scenes are actually quite entrepreneurial and have found ways to make a little cottage industry, and like a kind of little parallel world, separate to the mainstream music industry, where it is possible for some people to make some kind of income. And I think what's one of the things that's beautiful about this community is I think a lot of people are conscious of a lot of these things to do with streaming being like not paying you a lot and X, Y, and Z. I think people are quite generous, especially when there's a niche of music that they're really into. I think people are more willing to be generous to, like, Bandcamp's so good because you can like literally buy albums and it's not like anything that's streaming. I think I saw a stat that said something like if you bought one person's record like for like £10 or $10, whatever it is, it would be the same as if you streamed one of their singles every day for 3 years, which is crazy to think about. Like, because that's how we all, well, I know I consume my music on streaming services, and I think that's the common way to do it. And it's like, it doesn't make any sense for anyone who's an independent creator to make any sort of living off of it. It's really difficult. It's
we know people who do, but the numbers involved are insane.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think this is all leading on to the social media chat, because I think the numbers game is quite exponential, isn't it? It's like you have to battle to get your first 20 listeners or whatever, but then it's not it's not as hard to get that 20 up to 200, and the difference between 200 and 2000 isn't that different. And you know, like, and 20,000 turning into 200,000 or whatever. Like, we know people who've been on those journeys. You know, we know people who have hundreds of thousands of monthly listeners, or, you know, in Frank Javsi's case, like over, you know, in the millions, which is crazy. So I mean, we do know people who have crazy numbers and are able to make a living and streaming, but, like, you know, we're aware that's like a tiny percentage of people who are trying that game. But yeah, you've kind of experienced something very similar on the kind of TikTok and Reels side of things. So yeah, why don't you tell us about how that went down? So yeah, what's your format? What do you do? And yeah, what happened?
So in 2022, I finally bit the bullet and decided to download TikTok for the purpose of creating content. I never actually had it for consuming content on there. I was always a little bit funny about joining it at first, but this sounds really embarrassing. Anthony Fantano, I was watching a video of Anthony Fantano's, and he said something to the effect of, if you're an artist and you're making music and you're trying to get yourself out there and you're not on TikTok, why? Like, he was like, what are you doing? And I just had this weird moment where I went, why am I not doing this? Because like, realistically, I saw firsthand through my housemates who were full-time TikTokers, I saw firsthand through them how much quickly you can grow as a creator by posting your content on there, because of how their algorithms work and everything. So I sort of just sat down and went, all right, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to create DJ content on there, because it was actually a good way for me to practice DJing, because I hadn't necessarily had that many gigs or anything similar before. I had some DJ decks. I was just looking for a way to almost like sell myself in that sense. And it was initially just a way in which to plug my music, because the worst thing that would happen was that I get 10 extra monthly listeners because an algorithm pushed my DJ content their way. So I was thinking, why not? I'll give it a go. I was posting stuff and it went really well. I posted one video and I actually remember it really well. I remember before uploading it, I went, why am I like dancing in my bedroom with like my DJ decks? Like,
don't overthink it.
I was like, why am I like dancing like an idiot to this thing? I was like, do I post this? This one's, and it was a lot sillier than the other ones. And I went, I shouldn't post this. And then I thought, TikTok's like chewing gum. It's like, you'll see it for a bit, you'll forget about it in like an hour or two. Just upload it, see what happens. And then within like a day, it got like 120,000 views. And I went, right, so this is my thing now.
That was with your first one?
That was I think I've made like 10.
Okay.
And so in that sense, I got very lucky in terms of like virality on TikTok. And then I sort of just followed that train of like, okay, these mashups, like I've got an ear for these clearly, because people are gravitating towards it. I just needed to make them a bit more lively and a bit goofier, essentially. And they are really fun to make. When I make something together that kind of works, a lot of the time I'm just messing around with sounds.
So there's always you mashing up two things that like really shouldn't go together, and like the caption. I think the captions used to change, but the caption is like more or less the same now. Yeah, point of view.
So this is one of those things with TikTok where I'd love to make it more unique every time, but sometimes you do sort of have to stick with like what works and what gets people to share it around as well. And I learned through those housemates I had that there are certain things you want to do to, you know, capture people's audience and keep it there for a long time. Part of it is also when you get into a routine of making so many of these, there's only so much you want to like. I feel like sometimes you don't want to mess around with the formula too much. And ultimately, I know that what people are there for isn't really the caption. The caption is almost like the thing that you'll see or you'll pay attention to if you've never seen me before. But if you've seen my content before, or if you follow me on TikTok or anything like that, you're there because you want to hear what the new sound is. The caption is almost like doesn't really matter what that is, as long as people hear the music.
What is the caption? Point of view?
It's like club DJs when they hear club DJs playing the worst mashup you've ever heard, or something like along those lines. It's a bit I've been riding for a long time, and I'm sure I should probably change things up and do something different with it.
There's no guarantee that works, though.
Yeah, it's and maybe that's a fear thing that I need to overcome. Just like push out and do something a bit more creative with it. But ultimately, I'm quite lucky that I've built it to a point where I've got, I think, something like 85,000 followers who are really into all of that content. And I'm just kind of pushing with that. I've been very fortunate that that's got me some gig opportunities where I probably wouldn't have had it before. And a load of other people have checked out my music. Granted, I think they were hoping that my mashups would be on there. And listen, I know I've got a lot of sampled music that's on the streaming services, but putting Calvin Harris and LaRue on my own Spotify might land me in some hot water. So despite all of the requests to put them on Spotify, as much as I'd love to make some money off of it, I sadly cannot.
What? So one of those tracks was used on like a soccer montage on ITV, right? Right.
Yeah.
What? Do you think they used your audio, or do you think they like recreated it?
So.
And did they contact you at any point or not, or did you just
not
find
at all?
out
So
about it?
are you on TikTok?
Yeah.
Okay, so do you know about the sounds feature on TikTok? So they just use the sounds feature. So what you can do on that sounds thing is you can click on the bottom right corner, because it's my own original sound. You can click on it, and then it'll give you a drop down. And it'll show you all the people's videos that have just used my sounds. So you can just click add. So all this is ITV Sport. All they did was they just did that.
But their legal team would have had a little bit of work to do, wouldn't it? Sort of clear it, like
Maybe
making sure that those two artists get paid and you don't.
Probably. I don't know, to be honest. I think
TV.
I'd have to check. There was something like over 60,000 videos with using my sound, and I've seen genuinely not a penny from it, which is weird to think about. Granted, I know it's just a mashup of two tunes that I didn't make, but
you made the mashup though, so it's
I made the thing that people are sharing it for.
Yeah.
So there is a weird thing with TikTok is like Spotify. I would actually say it's in a lot of ways worse. They changed the algorithm recently, or not the algorithm. They changed their creator fund recently that they only fund videos that are over a minute long, which was a bit of a ball ache for my content because it's
short form.
It's very short form.
Yeah.
So I think they're basically trying to become like a new YouTube. I think that's the aim. So they want more long form content on there, but it didn't. So I was making like bit of pocket money essentially from TikTok, and that's gone from a little bit to pennies basically. Which it's very hard for creators to do that. The irony is they don't necessarily push the content that's long form, because the stuff that goes viral is short form content. So it's this weird paradox you have to live in where it will only do well it will only get views if it's short form, but you won't make any money. So it's like the balancing act of, okay, do I make something that's longer that less people will see and I might get paid a bit for it, or the opposite of that essentially, where it's shorter and I'll get nothing for it.
There's quite a funny irony that it's quite difficult for you to convert an audience who have they know you for one thing. It's quite hard to divert them towards your own music. Like it's only going to be a percentage of those people who you can direct towards your own music. There's like a funny irony that TikTok themselves are having a hard time like trying to pivot their audience away from short form content to long form content.
Yeah, it's really weird.
It's hard for all of us out here.
It was even harder because I don't know if you heard about this, but UMG removed their entire library from TikTok. So now, like basically a third, I would be willing to wager like a third of popular songs in the West do not exist on TikTok anymore. And there'll be artists who are like signed to maybe like a label underneath that will be like, right, well, you've been telling me to post every day. You've been making me work to post all my music, and now it's all not there anymore. So what am I supposed to be doing? It is.
I've sensed that frustration from people like Charlie XCX who are like throwing the label under the bus. It's like you're telling me to do this shit all the time, and then you go and pull your entire catalogue off.
It's crazy. It is crazy, and in a lot of ways, it almost feels like it hasn't been harder to be an artist, like a music artist, than now. There's a lot of things that we didn't have like decades ago, but in a lot of ways it's so hard to get yourself out there. So in a lot of ways I do feel quite grateful and fortunate that I got that like little break and I've built my own fan base of people. I'd love to expand on it, but the fact that I'm even at this point in itself and I've had opportunities for it is really cool. And it just makes me want to work harder just to keep doing what I'm doing, basically.
What's next for Snowdream then? you know, like not on the social media front, like in terms of your original music, like what's on the horizon?
Yeah, I've been really quiet on the music front recently. I think I only did 2 singles last year. I would like to drop an album this year. I'm not going to promise anything. An album will probably come this year. I think it sounds really, really cool, and I'm really excited to share it with everyone. But that should be coming soon. I'll probably drop some other stuff around that, so maybe probably some Future Funk related stuff as well, because I know a lot of people were really, like, a lot of people discovered me because I got placed on that Future Funk playlist that Spotify did with my song Strike. So I'd like to make more stuff that's kind of similar in that vein, but I've been taken more towards that direction of like UK garage sounds with those like old school samples as well. I think a lot of people will be surprised if they give it a try. I think they'll be surprised like how much they find that, even though there doesn't seem like a big parallel between like future funk as a genre and like UK garage, I think they'll be surprised that what they find on there that might actually be up there.
I think there's common ground, because UK garage is like
it's similar to house and all that sort of stuff. Like so a lot of those musical elements are
it's fun and kind of playful. It's not. Well, it's funny though, isn't it? Because there's like garage. It can be everything from like very frothy to like pretty. You know, it was kind of Public Enemy #1 in the right wing press at one stage, like as it was seen as impossibly dangerous. It's funny when you listen to it and it's like, you know, really like slick soulful music.
Ooh, you're moving too fast. Yeah, like, what on earth is this got to? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, to be fair, that probably isn't the kind of thing that people were scared of, because obviously like garage kind of bleeds through into grime and kind of has like jungle in its DNA.
Yeah, and I've kind of dabbled in some of that stuff, and I think I took a lot of influence from when I used to make beats into making UK garage stuff. A lot of what I make is, especially with the type of drums, I love just a lot of 2-step stuff. And again, that's that like Artful Dodger and like Sunship, all of those those are like a primary influence for me for
that stuff was literally on the radio, wasn't it? Like
exactly. And
it was club music that existed on the radio, and I think future funk is like a club music that exists on the internet. You know, it's in the UK, it's still rare to hear it in clubs. Like over in the States, like there's an ecosystem for it. You know, there are regular nights, but in the UK, not so much. But obviously, there was Groove Horizons, and then, you know, we're doing our Future Sounds thing, which has had an element of future funk in it. And you know, Mr. Wax will be doing some at the next one, which is in May in Folklore again. But yeah, we need to maybe more future funk at Future Sounds, and maybe more future funk nights. Full stop. Too many Fs.
I have a question for you. Is that right? When you're
depends what it is.
That's true. That's true. In terms of like bringing it to a live setting, does it feel harder to make these type of events? Because Future Sounds, from how I see it, it's sort of all encompassing of a lot of vaporwave related things. Do you
and
find
synthwave?
And synthwave as well. Do you find that's harder to do, to make it more of a sort of broader spectrum of sounds, or do you think it's, in inverted commas, easier to make it like a very niche specific sound of things? So for example, if you made it like a synthwave night or like a future funk night, do you find it's harder to make it more of a like variety show, for lack of better words?
Yeah, I like the variety show. It sounds like somebody's gonna do like a burlesque dance or pull a rabbit out of a hat. Yeah, that's what we're going for. I think we are kind of doing that. Like I think we've toyed with having like very genre specific nights, but I think what's worked in the States and what seems to work over here is kind of broadening, having a diverse lineup, and then hopefully attracting a diverse crowd. I don't think the interest in the UK is enough that we can get like a shitload of people coming to like a very specific, you know, like it would be cool, right, to do like a night of people who just make this kind of video game drum and bass stuff. Maybe you probably could get people down to that. Drum
and bass it has a very loyal crowd.
But I mean, this is quite different though, isn't it?
Yeah,
like the people who are into the kind of Wipeout stuff, it's like that's very different to like a normal drum and bass crowd. Yeah, I think that could work, like honing in on like a hyper specific niche. And I think like the OG Groove Horizons night was like a straight up future funk night.
It was, yeah.
But and like it was a wicked crowd, but like it It was a really small club.
It was
wasn't
a small crowd.
Yeah,
sure.
it's like, you know, we're trying to get this thing off the ground. You know, that was 2019. They were trendsetters. We had a couple of years of being really interrupted. It's now 2024 somehow, and yeah, we're trying to get it off the ground in the same way that it is in the States, and we're not quite there, but like hopefully we will be. The States, you know, there are these regular nights. I mean, like at its biggest, I suppose, like there are people in our scene who are involved in these kind of Shrek raves and the SpongeBob ones. And the you know, those are playing to high hundreds or like low thousands.
Yeah, but they're based on IPs that are really like just will forever be popular. So it's a bit more of an uphill battle, I guess. But I guess the beauty of having it be more varied is that you've cultivated an audience of people who probably listen to loads of genres as well. So you're able to bring people from different spaces in the room and also have a core group of people who are already into kind of everything anyway. Straight
up synthwave nights have existed for a while and are popular, but I think like it's an older genre in terms of the you know, the music's been around longer. The crowd is arguably older as well, and you know, like they're kind of more willing to travel, might have a bit more cash in their pocket. Future Funk's crowd skews quite young and skews quite online, I think, as well, you know, meaning like either that they live in very far-flung places or, you know, aren't necessarily inclined to like go into clubs and stuff. Like if you've got social anxieties and stuff like that, like maybe the last place you want to be is in a club. But the sell would be like, this isn't really like a normal nightclub experience. This is clubbing with like-minded people, and I got those vibes from Groove Horizons. Like people were just like letting loose right there.
It was just a bunch of amazing, beautiful, the loveliest people, the coolest, funnest internet nerds all crammed into one room having a pie. It was great. It was so much fun.
50 people is definitely a party. It's like making the economics of that work is harder.
And it felt more communal as well. Like I'd never met any of these people. Like I'd never met Strawberry Station at the time, who's now a good friend of mine, but I remember he'd never said hi, like I didn't know at all beforehand, but he's like coming up to me like, oh hey mate, how you doing, you having a good time, all that sort of stuff. I'm like this is like, it's so different. It's such a different experience to what you would get in any other like setting like that. When you've got a niche of people who are really into this thing that you're into, you just create such a great vibe. And you know, when there's regular people turning up, you know, I try my absolute hardest to be regulars for any show that happens for this scene, because I love the music and it's full of really great people. And
it doesn't happen all that often either, right?
No, like exactly. Yeah, I tried.
Only a few times a year get to do it. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. We can probably wrap it up there, but I think we'll probably record like a little intro and outro with the others. Yeah. And should promote the show. I didn't say what the date of the thing was, and sort of frantically looking. Yeah,
I can't.
May
it's
25th.
There you go.
There you go. 25th of May. FutureSounds 5 at Folklore, back at Folklore where one of the OG ones was. It's a wicked venue, and they've got a cat called Manouche, so make sure to come and say hello to Manouche. But yeah, thank you very much, Elliot / Snowdream. It's been a pleasure having you here.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
And there we have it. That was good, right? So we're all have to become global content creators, yeah? See you at the bar. So I must drop in that, of course, Thom, with his musical partner Jay and a host of other wicked vocalists, have just released a new Donor Lens album, Rose Room. It's getting a lot of love, huge love on the socials, and the physicals have been flying off the shelves at my pet Flamingo towers. So I've done a little review of the album over at future-sounds.co.uk, so do check that out. And a podcast not too far away, we'll have Thom, hopefully Jay, talking about Rose Room and deep diving into some of the collabs and inspirations for that, so watch this space. We'll all be back very soon. I think as this is dropping, we're hitting the Easter break, which means a long weekend, at least for those of us in the UK. But for now, from me and everyone else at FutureSounds FM, see you next time.